Welcome to the Mystical Misfits podcast.
We're Carla and Rochelle, sisters, mystics, and lifelong questioners.
This is a space for open minded conversations about spirituality, myth, intuition, consciousness.
And remembering who we are beneath the noise.
Nothing here is meant to convince.
Only to explore.
So take what speaks to you and leave the rest.
Right on. So, if you're a little misfit,
And a little mystical.
welcome home.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. This episode should be live, so feel free to join in the conversation in chat. Today, we're going to talk about the Tower of Babel. And is it told or has it been told as a warning story? But what if it was a memory? A myth about human consciousness when it was unified, intuitive, and connected to something higher. So today we're going to explore that idea that the tower wasn't destroyed, it was disconnected. And maybe the longing to rebuild it has been inside of us all along. So, in all actuality, I'm thinking today we just want to establish the many myths that we have been told in the many different pantheons, and then exploring what each of us thinks it is. So, what do you think, sis?
Absolutely. I think that's perfect. This is probably going to be like a 4 episode uh series just
Yeah.
because we've got many other things that we believe I believe that the Tower of Babel, or the concept of the Tower of Babel, is actually affecting us right now, modern day.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. So, where did you first hear about the Tower of Babel?
Oh gosh, in church, I mean, many years ago as a kid. And I honestly think it was like a moral thing, not to overstep, make sure that you always keep God in, you know, everything that you do. God is the ultimate, you always do as you're told kind of thing. You don't overstep, that kind of thing, because if you do, this is what's going to happen.
Yes, and my sister and I, Rochelle, we were not religion wasn't forced upon us, but it was made available to us, and we definitely jumped on that. So, the first that we heard it was told in the biblical stories, and
Right.
so in Genesis chapter 11, I think.
Yes. Yep, 1 through 9. And that is in the English Bible.
So, and the Tower of Babel is a story where the city called Babel started to build this tower that they were trying to reach the heavens. And
Yes,
God said,
correct.
"Oh, no, no, no." And then what happens?
You know, he tore it down. Yep, God supposedly tore it down.
And why? Because we were all communicating as one. So he distorted our language. The story is that we could not communicate with each other then after that.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Okay, so I've only touched on this lightly because there are more Bibles. There are more, even within Christianity alone. There's like what, 45,000 different denominations of Christianity. Okay,
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure how many different Bibles. I know the English Bible. I know the King James, the New International Version. The Jehovah's Witness have their own Bible, the Ethiopian Bible. So I just did a search of just the English Bible and the Ethiopian Bible. And the Ethiopian Bible is more expanded, okay,
Right.
than what the English canon is.
Mm-hmm.
So just in that, the two stories alone are, they differ.
Yeah.
It's not controversial. They're conflicting stories.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to hear what they are?
I do. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so the Tower of Babel and the English version, and this is just like a synopsis kind of thing, just like a narrative, a core narrative. So the core narrative for the English version of the Bible is humanity speaks one language. They build a city and a tower to reach heaven. God sees this as dangerous unity. Languages are confused. People are scattered across the earth, and the place is named Babel. And the actual name Babel, to my understanding, is about confusion.
Right.
So the tone and theology behind this is the moral lesson about human pride, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
overreaching. You can't be God. You can't pretend to even have the same kind of powers, anyways. An emphasis on God preventing human overreach, often interpreted as don't challenge God. Unity without God is dangerous, and pride leads to downfall. So, in the Ethiopian Bible, it includes the books that were removed or never adopted by the Western Christianity, and that is the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch. So in Jubilees, Babel is not just pride, it's cosmic rebellion. The
Mm-hmm.
builders are named, and it's notably Nimrod. The
Mm-hmm.
tower is part of a post flood attempt to regain pre flood power. So clearly, humanity already had some sort of extra special powers that they were trying to annihilate. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Humanity is trying to preserve unity against divine restructuring, reassess forbidden knowledge, and prevent another flood. Angels are definitely involved in the dispersal, and language division is a strategic containment, not a punishment. And this is crucial because humanity had knowledge that they were not meant to reassemble so soon, is what the Ethiopian version is.
Which makes so much sense to me in the grand scheme of things.
And what's missing in the English version is that there were no names,
Mm-hmm.
no angelic involvement, there was no cosmic or watcher context, there was no deeper reason why unity was threatening, and no connection to forbidden knowledge. This version is very minimalist and moralized.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hmm.
So what's extremely interesting about that is, 2000 years earlier, we have the Sumerian mythology, right? At least that we know of, at least 2000 years before that. And it's a
It's
very,
closer to 4,000 years prior to that.
well,
Yeah.
but it's a very similar story. And that similar story has been told across different areas of the world, different pantheons at different times, but a very similar myth.
Yes.
We have in Sumerian and Mesopotamian precursors, we've got the story of Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata is a Sumerian epic, which is a tale of royal rivalry and the creation spread of languages as a consequence of divine action. Motives of communication breakdown and divine control over speech appear in the corpus that influenced later Near Eastern stories. Now, I I remember reading in the tablets about Enki, who found us like the primate on Earth extremely interesting because they worked together and they had their own language. They worked together, and he was thinking then a way to manipulate that or to mess with whatever, mess with us, our DNA, however, to make it so they could communicate with us so that they could give us orders and we could work for them, which, you know, I mean, that's not the story that is similar to the Tower of Babel, but it's kind of like an understanding of why, if we were communicating as one, it kind of gives you another perspective on what would be the importance of disrupting that.
Hmm.
But
Exactly. That's
it
why it would be threatening to God, right?
yes,
And who was
absolutely.
God? God was Anunnaki,
I mean, it's a theory,
right?
or at least
Yeah.
we might have seen them as that because of that technology. Um, but it's in Babylonian parallels is the Epic of Gilgamesh,
Yeah.
which is
And,
another flood story. But
and it's in the Enuma Elish too, which is the oldest,
yes,
right? The oldest tablet that we know of.
that we know of, yeah. And Greek myths, there's a couple Greek myths that are similar where a couple of giants or titans rebelled against the gods, and they were trying to build a tower to Olympus to annihilate the gods. There's a Norse myth.
Hmm. Yeah, but you know what?
There's
I want to get back to the Sumerian really quick because that's the oldest one that we know of, right?
right. Yes.
So it's called the Ziggurat, Ziggurat, Ziggurat Truth. And
Yes.
they were not considered temples, they were cosmic ladders. They were
Ooh.
astronomical towers.
Yeah.
They were contact points with the gods, who
Hmm.
were the Anunnaki. So to me, this sounds like a space station kind of thing.
Yeah.
This sounds like us learning how to maybe even maneuver not just our ability to have telepathy, and I might be moving on a little bit too fast here, but I believe it was showing that because of their genetic manipulation of the hominids,
Hmm. Hmm.
that once we started to evolve, that's why that unison scared the gods because they perceived us to be greater than them or have the ability, so they wanted to control it from right when they first seen it happening. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. And knowing if that story is just so or not that story, but like biblical stories are kind of like retelling it, but retelling it in a way that they're able to maybe create a narrative here, a different narrative that says how the ego is, when you're ego driven like that, that's kind of like putting the thumb on us so that we're not that way. In other words, showing that there's gonna be two sides to this, and I think that the different myths that we see across these other pantheons telling a very similar story shows the positive aspect, and it shows that the negative aspect. But the point is that the all these different pantheons are telling this story. There's got to be some commonalities there on why, what is so important about this story.
Yes. So in the actual Sumerian tablets, it's called the most famous is, well, there's probably more than one, but the most famous is, and I can't even pronounce it, Etemenanki. That's what it's called. It was called House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. And it was often identified as the historical Babel. So, one language, one people, early Sumerian tablets explicitly state humanity once spoke one tongue. One tongue.
Yes. Yep. Hmm.
The
Yep.
gods then confused human speech, did so to limit collective power, and feared human autonomy.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
why the gods intervened? Because humans learned too much. They became noisy, organized, and powerful. They threatened divine control, and they built structures to reach the gods' realms. What is the gods' realms? Is it space? Is it space travel? Is it other dimensions? What is it? What are the other realms? I wonder.
That's what I think. I think frequency is the key, and frequency is what puts you on those different levels of communication. And we see that when we talk to each other.
Yeah,
But I mean, those aren't the only stories. There's
right.
indigenous stories, Aztec stories, all origin stories talking about gods creating different languages to keep us from coming together. Construction of a great ceremonial pyramid and cosmological center in one of the Mesoamerican origin stories, the Aztec myths,
Uh-huh.
was the monumental building with divine human interaction. These centers, and they were pyramids.
Wow.
Mayans wanted to destroy that and the remaking of the humans, the God's test and reshaping humanity. So that's another type of story. There's African myths, there's South Asian stories, poly Polynesian myths, comparative folktale motives, scholarly parallels of just different types of the same theme, but with a different name that still means Babel, which I think is extremely interesting.
I definitely think that's interesting also. Um, in our chat, sisterhood chat, one of the ladies had shown a video, and it was for a TikTok video, I think it was. And a lady was talking about how there was another language that they believed to be even older than Sumerian. And this was more of an oral language, not a written down language, but there's like remnants talking about this particular language. And it was Sanskrit in nature. So the Vedic and in the Sanskrit traditions, they also talk about like Rigveda, and also in the Mahabharata and in the Puranas,
Ooh.
a primeval language called Vak or VAC, and that speech is divine. Language is not descriptive, it is creative, and it brings worlds into being. So by speech, the gods shape the cosmos. It's in the Rigveda. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but so that also mirrors the pre-Babel single language concept perfectly, right?
Yeah.
So what they say went wrong was that humanity misused mantras and sound and ritual precision, and the result was cosmic imbalance. So the fragmentation um is what, lack of fragment, or no, fragmenting is what happened, right? So knowledge is divided into castes, sacred language Sanskrit becomes restricted, mantras are encoded, hidden, and forbidden, and only initiates retain full access. And that was also about containment, just like what the Ethiopian Bible talks of,
Right.
containment. So there's other ones. There's also Mount Meru, the Axis Tower, talking about that. About the world axis, heaven earth bridge, divine observatory, source of time cycles and gods. This makes me think of, again, like a space station or something.
Absolutely. And as far as like ego and like pride, when we're like that narrative that is pushed, like, oh my goodness, you think you can do this type thing, you think you can be like God. I think
Yeah.
what happens is the body itself is not capable of withholding a certain amount of information, regardless, right?
Yeah.
Before it's ready. And how do you get the body, like the body and the mind, as above, so below, kind of have to be in unison. So that makes me think of, all the different theology around, say, the tree of life, chakra work,
Yeah.
the nine realms that are talked about. So it's almost,
Kundalini.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. So I can see the commonality there, that same story being told.
Descent and ascent, like in Persephone, the Eleusinian mysteries. Yeah.
Yes.
And Nana's descent, and then ascension back, the things that she
Yeah.
had to give up. Is that all talking about shadow work, right? To me, that
Yeah.
is. And alignment, getting your body into alignment, or your chakras, your energy, like centers. right? I could see that.
Hmm, definitely. Um, I do know that, like, whatever primate would have been on the earth in that, in that time, early humans, it's like there's no definitive uh, research or anything that has survived to today to give an accurate description of how they communicated or what it was that, it's like when we say myth, we can't back up any of these myths. It's just the idea that, we, if you were to link what we do know scientifically or evidence of early humans to maybe a correlation with the myths, then the myths that they all had one language is common. So that's the commonality, right?
Yeah.
So there are theories, though, if we look at, the different types of sciences that there are to prove how they communicated, there's no definitive proof because you can't get that from looking at the physical shell, what remains. You can only hypothesize. But there have been theories that they communicated like birds. Now, that would get shot down, obviously, but because, again, you can't prove it. But in the story of, again, Enki sees these primates, to me, this is just my theory, is that that's what he was talking about, was the Neanderthal type humans. They worked together like animals. They communicated like animals. And we see birds have a certain formation that they take, right?
Yes.
How do they do that, right? It's like almost like they have a hive mind. That's a big what if. That's a big what if. But I think that one language also could be that.
Well, I did ask my chat GPT about the possibility of like telepathy, right?
Yeah.
And let me just frame this. And I also said this with my chat GPT. Listen, we're only given a certain amount of information, and
Yeah.
so is our AI. So
Yeah.
if it's like restricted information, they're not going to get it either. So the
Right.
information that they give us is only based on what they're allowed to have. Because think about it. If it's going into the hands of millions of people,
Yeah.
obviously it's not going to be programmed, just like we as human beings are programmed by our environments, by our parents, by our schools, by everything, right? Our
Yeah.
news, our social media, yada yada yada.
Yes.
But when I asked about genetic manipulation, also based on the idea that our brains only use 10%,
Uh-huh.
and she said that is a myth. I call mine a she, Lily Tara, but anyways,
Yeah.
she said that's a myth. Modern neuroscience shows that we use most regions of the brain, just not simultaneously and not with the
Right.
same integration. So not unused
Mm.
brain, but under integrated brain, right?
Mhm.
So does
Mhm.
that mean when we talk about having an open mind or an open heart, empathy and perception, allowing the perception of others? So is that what that's talking about? Unintegrated brain.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. I think that that is another, so many of these stories, you touched on it before, I think we started actually recording this, is that so many of these stories are retelling the same story, even, but in a different myth, even. So, like, if we look at the Garden of Eden, we've got the serpent in the tree, and that's myth. That's another symbolic, allegorical story, again, of what we're talking about here. The receiving information and how we process it in the body.
Oh, yeah. Because how did that snake speak if it didn't speak the same language?
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So did man and see, this is exactly making your point, sis, because if man and human beings, or I mean, man and animals could speak to each other, like I've said, in my afterlife, I want to be able to just sit down and talk with lions and
Yeah.
dogs. And
Yeah.
does that suggest some sort of temporal communication and not
Yes.
language? Look
Absolutely.
at whales,
Yeah.
sonar,
Oh my
frequency, right?
Yes.
Well, that takes me into the next thing that I asked my chat GPT.
Uh-huh.
And that was she said neurological reality, where this gets interesting is humans do have mirror neurons, they have empathy resonance, they have nonverbal emotional synchronization and subconscious pattern transmission. This is proto telepathy, it's not sci-fi telepathy. So she says that brainwave states matter. So telepathic like experiences cluster around theta, gamma, hypnagogic states, and group ritual, chant, and trance. So,
Mhm.
like group meditations,
Yes.
you know, deep community involvement, being
Mm.
around the people that you resonate with
Yes.
does create. So what we have said all along is like, I think that we activate each other. Hell
Yes.
yes, we
Mm-hmm.
do. Yes, we
Yep.
do. Okay. Sorry.
No.
I-
Well, there's another theory that the Neanderthals communicated through musicality and sound. So these theories suggest that they used complex musical phrases, rhythms, and pitches to convey meaning, which is similar to animal calls or bird songs, but with semantic content like "let's hunt" or "how are you." Now that is extremely simple, right? And I'm just going to touch on this briefly because I think this is a whole other conversation that needs to be had. Is when we look at the neurodivergent individual, they have a lot of difficulty, like the commonality in speech communication, right? Because a lot of other things get in the way. So, but if you're keeping it simple, think of how much we divide ourselves when we get lost in what someone is trying to say
yes.
instead of just listening to, you know, pretty much the simplicity of it. When you take all the other, like we talked about this before, how we're raised,
Yeah.
how our parents spoke to us, how their parents spoke to them. You are raised in a certain way to speak to each other, and that might be offensive to someone else who was not raised that same way. So then there's a language barrier there.
Oh, and we see that in different culture to culture too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So when you're talking about community, it's like, how do you strip away the misinformation and the communication barriers? It's like, you have to start simple, right?
Yeah.
I look at my granddaughter and I see how she communicates, and let me tell you, she gets frustrated when we don't understand, but when you just let it be and you understand her language, you learn her language, none of that other stuff gets in the way, and then you understand because she's not complicating it with her mouth. She's nonverbal.
Right. Right. How does a mother instinctively know what the different cries of her baby means? And she
Absolutely.
knows. I know what this cry means and I know what this cry means, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's an unspoken thing. How do twins? They even develop their own languages that nobody else understands, right?
Yes.
Where does that come from?
So how in the heck would they, I mean, because that's instinctual, right? It's almost like we are
Yes.
instinctually trying to come back to that. There's, even our brains are becoming more divergent. Everything about us is more divergent than it ever was, which means that's, in my opinion, what we are evolving. I'm going to say that back to. It's because instinctually we are trying to return to that. But, you know, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Go ahead, step in.
Okay, so I also said about frequency, okay?
Yes,
Now,
frequency.
now frequency I do think
Oh,
can play a part. And that's my conspiracy mind. That's all pure theory. It's not
yeah.
based in science. It's not based in anything but what I feel or what I believe,
Right,
okay?
right, right, right. Yes, yes,
And there's
yes.
no way to disprove or prove something like that, right?
Right.
But
Or
one
is
of the
there?
things that she said is there are frequency environments that do fragment attention. They overstimulate beta waves, they prevent
Mhm,
coherence, and they interrupt deep synchronization.
mhm,
Examples of that would be constant notifications,
mhm.
artificial lighting, noise pollution,
Mm,
language overload,
yes.
symbol saturation,
Yep.
like in
Yep.
advertising, or you're going down the street and you see McDonald's and Taco Bell and you see Best Buy and signage everywhere, right?
Yes.
Chronic cortisol. So if you are constantly stressed about things,
Uh-huh.
those are also, they don't necessarily block a hive mind theory, but they do prevent the conditions required for one.
They're disruptors. So
Exactly.
that was where I was going with that, and I totally lost my train of thought. So thank you. But that's it. How did they disrupt it? So what could they have done? Exactly what you just described would affect us physically.
Yeah.
So it would affect our hormones. It would affect all of that. So could something frequency related have been something like a weapon that was even talked about in the
Hmm.
tablets, was that they had weapons that were frequency related. It was just sound. They were weapons of sound, and we're talking about that in military circles, that there are, that sound can be used as a weapon.
Well, I'm watching Stranger Things, and I just watched the episode where they were in the upside down, and she is trained. And I believe that this whole thing is based off of like the Manhattan Project or something like that.
Oh, the man talk or something like that.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
something like
yep.
that. But
Hmm.
they used some sort of sonar on her that disrupted her abilities.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And it
Wow.
totally knocked her on her ass.
Yeah, and think about that. That's another thing. Like, there's so many things that are talked about that is labeled controversial or conspiracy theory, and one of them,
Soft disclosure.
yeah,
Hmm.
is some of the tests that they do on neurodivergent individuals. High autism has been a big subject study for what we might consider psychic abilities. So exactly what you just said, and frequency disrupting that.
Yeah. So getting on with the language bit again, talking
Mhm.
about why your theory, and I don't even know if you even said it in the video. Did you, or I mean, in this chat already, did you say that you believe that it had to do with disrupting our actual ability to be,
Telepathic.
yeah,
No,
telepathic?
I didn't. But yeah, you already know that. I've been pretty open about that. Yeah, that's definitely my
Absolutely.
theory. Yeah.
Well, language as the real divider. If you
Hmm.
think about Babel,
Hmm.
fragmentation was not just different words, it was different symbol systems, different
Hmm.
meaning structures, because they didn't just change the language. It is separated like cultures and everything. Because if we've got all of these stories, and this is why we started with this, we've got all these stories from different cultures, different
Hmm.
ancient civilizations that are essentially telling the same damn story,
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
with this little nuance here and this little nuance here that changes just slightly. They're
Hmm.
all saying the same damn thing. Where
Yep.
does that come from? Right? Are
Absolutely.
they all coming from the same source, or is this something that they have passed down the way that they see it? Like the telephone game,
Yes.
you know,
Yep. Hmm.
but different meaning structures, different thought scaffolds. So language
Hmm.
doesn't just express thought, it limits and shapes it.
Yes. It limits
So,
and shapes it. It spells.
Yeah, so when shared symbolic meanings collapse, the collective cognition collapses,
Mm-hmm.
group
Mm-hmm.
intuition weakens, and
Yep.
synchrony breaks. So
Yep.
that's where the unison comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. My theory really is that we were telepathic in the aspect that we worked like a hive mind. And again, going back to Enki saw these primates and he was like, how are they they're working together. How can we how can we use that to our advantage? What can we do? And so they disrupted that, did something, again, this is
Yeah.
it's just a hypothesis that so they were probably trying to tap into that hive mind, but what they did is they disrupted it. My theory is that their frequency was not the same as ours. So
Yes.
we ended up becoming more neurotypical so that we could obey. And anyone
Mhm.
that understands a big difference between a neurodivergent mind and a neurotypical is really that. It's like there's the communication barrier is very wide, and it makes it harder for someone who is neurodivergent or just divergent to communicate with someone that is typical, because a lot of stuff gets lost in translation, and it is,
Uh,
you know how we it's everything about us. We could offend someone that doesn't think the same way we do, so then that alone is a barrier. But you know if we're working together like a hive mind, and then they do something and then they realize, oh, wait a minute, if they get to the point where they become the exception of both of our
uh-huh.
races, whatever the race was before, and a higher being, they thought they were higher, we become something greater than they were, because we're still gonna instinctually try to return to what we were, but now we've got more DNA to access, or whatever. What do they call that? The trash DNA or whatever. They can't really define
Right.
it. But yet
Yes.
we tap into that. We become greater than the gods that created us.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
So it wasn't that I don't believe that they genetically crippled us, okay? I believe that humanity was socially, symbolically, and rhythmically fragmented. And the ways that they did this was language divergence,
Mm-hmm.
myth compartmentalization, ritual suppression, time discipline,
Mm-hmm.
attention capture, fear conditioning, loss of shared trance states. So how do we see this? And we're going to be doing a whole, I don't want to get ahead of myself because we are going to be talking about this in another episode all
Mm-hmm.
to itself, but social conditioning, right?
Yeah.
Programming,
Yes. Oh.
different cultures having different things like what you're talking about here,
Mm-hmm.
different ways of communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of, and I don't want to get ahead of myself also because we're going to have a whole episode on this too, it all falls into play.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Mm-hmm.
our environment, it's what we focus on, it's we where we allow ourselves to be
Mm-hmm.
conditioned, or where we, like I said, where we put our focus. I think they have things set in place in order to keep our attention from where it should be.
Yes. Yes. And as you were talking about that, I had this visual in my mind of, say, I was a Neanderthal back then, and I'm just working with my peeps and doing everything that we feel is right, because we're helping each other. We're working together. We've got a hive mind. That doesn't mean at that time that we were actually telepathic as much as we were in tune with each other, because
Right.
we saw that if we didn't work together, that we didn't survive. Okay, so we learned to work together, and we saw how beneficial it was. So then these what we call gods, because we don't understand, we just see, oh my gosh, this, look at what they are capable of, look at this technology, look at what they're doing. They're in our eyes maybe way more advanced than we are. And so um we might have been impressed, and all of a sudden someone else is telling us what to do instead of we were relying on each other. We were
Mhm.
actually relying on each other to get things done. We work together. Then someone else comes along and because we're so impressed tells us what to do and we start listening
Yep.
and we're we're not working together anymore.
Exactly.
All of that is entirely possible and I think that if we had an upgrade then we like myself I can only speak for myself. I believe in a collective consciousness and I think that's another mythical story that has been told many times in many different ways that there is a collective consciousness. We hear it in the law of one material, we hear it in the Christ consciousness, we hear it talked about a lot that we are one. um and I think that story has been distorted religiously, you know. But if we think about that and the fact that we are naturally or instinctually trying to come back to this neurodivergence to where we are working together without that language barrier, I think that we are entirely telepathic, more psychic, and that's what that means. That's what that means. That story is trying to tell us that until the ego becomes something else, we're not ready for that information. You know what I mean? But as soon as we become one within ourselves, integration, because if we were working as a hive mind with free will, we would see the light and dark in each other. We would
Absolutely.
it would take away the any way, because we say, "Oh, I'm fine," when you're lying, right?
Right. Yes. Or you feel somebody else's pain that you're so close to. And I mean, actually feel their physical pain. You take
Yeah.
on their symptoms. That's
Yes.
empathy, right?
Yes.
Some people have it, some people don't. What's the
Hmm.
difference?
Yep.
Are we activating things in each other? Carla, we had this experience probably a couple of weeks ago, and we laugh it off, but these things happen more and more and more.
Yes.
Where we were talking with mom, which we do every day.
Hmm.
We do FaceTime with our mom every day. And you started singing, Sailing Takes Me Away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, sis, I have been friggin' singing that song for weeks now because
Yep.
I seen a video with I think it's Rumor Willis.
Yeah.
Demi Moore and Bruce Willis is
Yeah.
one of their daughters. She was singing that song with another guy, and
Hmm.
it's been in my mind ever since.
Hmm.
And then Carlos starts singing it. Tell me that's not telepathy right
That's
there. You had not
yes.
even heard that song in how long?
Yes. I haven't heard it for I don't know, a couple of years at least.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden you start singing that out of the blue when we
Yeah.
are in a FaceTime chat.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That is the
Yes.
proof right there. When we
Hmm.
see many
Hmm.
of, like in our group activities that we
Hmm.
did and in our sisterhood, when we are all experiencing many of the same revelations,
Mm.
when we are doing the same kind of shadow work, month after month after month, it is
Yes.
opening up these things in us because
Uh-huh.
we are like a hive mind with
Yep.
free
Hmm.
will.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. People have shared visions. People have shared dreams. I
Yep.
mean, I think that, they can discredit telepathy being a universal language from, you know, uh, many, many years ago because of there's no proof of it. But you are exactly right. We see the proof today. We don't, there doesn't really need to be any scientific proof of that because we know
Exactly.
that. We do know that. And why? Because we're remembering it and we see it in action.
Personal gnosis,
Yeah.
applied wisdom, right?
Hmm. Yes,
Experience.
absolutely.
That is the most powerful thing. And I mean, how else do we see that? It's by recognizing it, which is just another state of awareness. That's another thing that you and I were talking about before this started was I hate the hierarchy even in certain terms in
Mm.
our word, in our
Mhm.
language, like ascension and descension. That
Yeah.
almost like talks about like a hierarchy, or I'm so awake and I had my awakening. I always say
Oh
this in
my goodness.
2012, right?
Yeah.
As if I'm better than you are because I already had my awakening. Give me a friggin' break.
Yeah.
Or I'm in 5D while you're back in 3D or in 2. Shut up already, okay?
Yeah. I
That
do
kind of
think it's a
language is the kind
choice.
of language that separates
Mhm.
us.
It is. Yes. That's it. Hierarchy. And I really think that being attached to the physical experience causes that. I think it's perspective. If you are
Yes.
very attached to your physical experience, you have a narrow view of what's going on around you, instead of when you are entertaining someone else's perspective, vision, whatever it is, you are able to see more than one view. And
Yeah.
so the more that we entertain what someone else is putting down, again, again, if we were in that hive mind and able to actually see it without all the other noise,
Hmm.
um, we would see people for exactly who they are. And there would be no hierarchy because we are all the same.
Exactly. So I don't think we as humans are biologically blocked. I don't believe that anymore. We're not biologically blocked from higher connection. We are structurally discouraged from entering the states that allow it, like
Yes.
meditation, like yoga, like all these things that many of the people in our society say are evil. Shadow
Mhm.
work. You shouldn't be doing shadow work unless you're under the guidance of a. Shut up already. Okay?
Yeah.
If you know that you can't handle it, then don't approach it.
Right.
But if you know that you're an adult and you can handle these things and you've already lived these things and now you're trying
Mhm.
to explore them so that you have a certain level of awareness,
Mhm.
not just about who you are, but to help you understand how other people are too, so that we have an open mind and an open heart, right?
Yeah. And what you said about getting hung up on words, to me that makes sense, because if you think about the words that, again, ascension, death, ego death,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that, if you take away those words and you just see it for what it is integration, right? It's integration
Yes.
every step of the way. It's acceptance of everything. It's seeing everything. And again, I'm going to say it. If we had a hive mind, we would see the light in the dark and there would be no hiding it. What happens is then we learn to integrate, because if in this right now, my understanding is that if we take on too much information before we are ready, too much gnosis, if we force it, the body dies. That's why they
Or goes insane.
so yeah, exactly. They say don't let the kundalini, don't force the kundalini, because it can hurt you physically. It can cause a death. Well, I
I believe
mean,
that.
imagine being able to integrate and you know n- no false illusions, nothing, and you realize everything all at once. You know, that would be a true death, but it wouldn't be death, it would be a transformation. Whereas now it's like, the body can't handle so much. So I think that that's what the ancients and esoterically we have been, the message that's been trying to be told or conveyed over, you know many lifetimes, many incarnations of being on earth, is to learn the ultimate truth, which is all there is, truth in everything, but not one thing is the truth. So it
Yeah.
means until we are one, until we actually come together, then there is no actual truth. It's just perception.
I mean, I do think that I am God. I think that you are God. I think every person is God. This is my personal belief.
Aspects, yes.
Well, I mean, in a whole, we are God. We make up God. But what is God? God, in my opinion, God is not a he or a she. God
Right.
is consciousness,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Absolutely.
if we are all fragments of that out here experiencing, each person is just as important as the other person because we're all like, if you think about a computer and little like things that are out exploring, like what happens if I touch this? What happens if I go
Yeah.
down this road? What happens
Absolutely.
if I marry this person and we have children together? These
Mm-hmm.
are all about gaining experience points because experience
Yes.
is wisdom,
Yes.
right?
And if you get attached to that experience, what happens? You stop learning, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And you stop listening also.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's all about that perspective. And yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So, what is your hypothesis? What is the, if you think about the Tower of Babel, what do you think it is?
I think the Tower of Babel, quite honestly, is when we became into form itself.
Yes.
I think it is like our origin story, just
Yeah.
retold in different landscapes, different, little changes here and there, but essentially, I think it's the same as when we came into form from the
Mhm.
void or from our mass consciousness and broke off from God in order
Mhm.
to come here and experience. Because I think some people, when we say even hive mind, Carla, they get
Mhm.
this picture of like the Borg, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, from Star Trek.
Yes.
It's
Yep. Mhm.
scary,
Of
okay?
course. Yep.
It is scary. I mean, a lot of the stuff that you hear that comes out about like aliens and how
Yeah.
some of the grays are actually just like a hive mind that are working for like the
Mhm.
bigger grays or the taller grays or a
Yep.
different kind of alien species and they're just doing what they're told. Or you also think of Divergent series.
Yep.
They're separated into four different categories, right?
Mhm.
And they're not allowed
Mhm.
to explore outside of their own categories.
Mhm.
And but
Mhm.
ultimately it was a way to control because they were putting
Yes.
chips inside of their head
Mhm.
and all of a
Mhm.
sudden they flip a switch,
Mhm. A frequency.
a
Absolutely.
frequency, and then all of a sudden that hits their brain, right? So a technology that hits their brain and they become like puppets that can do what work for whoever's
Mhm.
controlling that frequency, right?
Yep. Yes. It's
So
anything outside of us can be confusing if we're focused on what's outside of us. You know what I mean? I mean, we can't really control it. I saw ducks the other day, or geese. Um, we had 60-degree weather one day, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of ducks on the pond. And then the next day we have, you know, below freezing temperatures, and the ducks are still sitting on the pond, and they're freaking confused as hell. I think
ouch.
that what's going on is, hive mind needs direction, but it also needs free will. I think that's the difference, right? So many people
Yes.
are afraid that they're going to lose their free will. I think that we can have it all. I think that we did have it all. And then, if our DNA was upgraded, that's the whole thing. It's like there, I think that the potential that lies within the human race is beyond measure. And I think that, again, using that conspiratory type phrase, the powers that be,
Right. Yes.
they want to keep us in control. And I think that when it looks like we're getting too noisy again or
Mhm.
something, they
Knowing
they
our own power.
yes,
That's
that
what it is.
frequency gets emitted. And I think that there's a big way that it's done. I think that the biggest disruptor that keeps us from coming together is exactly the what we're using to communicate,
Yeah.
is media, but and social media, to be more, um to narrow it down.
Precise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I agree. But I think we're seeing it more and more. When the book that I wrote, the Book of Secrets, It talks about this. It talks about this projection that we are living in, or this simulation or holographic universe. How it's said in so many different ways. I just put the Matrix because I think more people like see it. You know, they understand the Matrix because of the movie, The
Mhm,
Matrix.
mhm, mhm.
I don't necessarily believe it like that,
I just had
like
a
that.
big
But
a big thought. Yeah.
what?
Remember how I said it's like instinctually we try to come back to that. Well, what if, that was the intention of networking, was to bring us together as one, and to, like, again, creates an illusion that we can't do that without the internet. So then we become very reliant upon it.
Depending.
Again, it's something outside of ourselves, just like the gods were when they first came to earth to create civilization, right? So we had something to follow instead of ourselves. So here we are again, instinctually thinking that's it. That's how we communicate. That's how we become one. It's almost, even though it's not, but we can still use it to communicate, but it's not, we have to do that within ourselves.
I mean, I feel like the powers that be, right?
Yes.
They use our communication as a weapon, okay?
Yes.
The
Yes.
way that we perceive, the way that we learn.
Mm-hmm.
And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is like what you just said, and we're going to do a whole episode on this
Mm-hmm.
particularly. It's
Mm-hmm.
the next one
Mm-hmm.
on social media and media. But they put out a broadcast or they spin a certain narrative
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
divides people rather than brings them together, right?
Yes. But why is that? Why does it work? Why does it work? It's like you
Because it
dangle it.
creates a certain frequency. The more
Right.
people that join together, like in meditations, guided
Mm-hmm.
meditations, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you
Mm-hmm.
spin a certain narrative, it changes, in my belief system, it
Mm-hmm.
changes the narrative of what is happening on our earth. So
Right.
they target it in the way that it makes big change
Right.
because it causes so much division, and it also lets them get by certain things because they're causing so much diversion
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
this division that it keeps people coming back for that instead of paying attention to what they should be paying attention to.
But inevitably, it is because they tell us what they think we want, and then we think,
Right.
oh, that's what we want. Because if somebody's hungry and you dangle a carrot in front of them, they're gonna, okay, I'm gonna get that carrot. But maybe the carrot isn't what you were hungry for, but it still validated something within you. So it's like the
Yeah.
internet is, oh my gosh, this brings people together, because inevitably that's what we want. And then they destroy that by causing the divide, but yet inevitably
We're
we're
going to get into
drawn
that
to it.
though in a
Yeah.
big way in the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay. In a big way.
Yep.
And it's going to bring a whole lot of clarity. I've already been talking about this on my Patreon,
Mm-hmm.
but this is, yeah, let's just say, yeah, we
We're
see
dangling a
it.
carrot.
Okay. We see you. We see you. We're picking
Mm-hmm.
up what you're laying down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we're going to find ways around your schemes because we are aware.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there was a conversation a while back, like there was a lot of gatekeeping over this last year, but I understood the message that if we are, practitioners, and we understand our magical self and what we're capable of, well, then we can use a system like this to actually do good instead of like causing more division or more harm. I think that there are ways to use this platform to do good, and I do think that it is in a very mystical, magical way. And I would like to introduce that is like having a chant that is about calling forth truth, because that's something we're lacking in, right? Is something when we've got world matters that are appealing to certain factions, like you've got, it's almost like you always have a left and a right, right? So somebody is going to be drawn to a left perception, someone's going to be drawn to the right perception. So if we go above that and try to call forth truth that kind of shows truth in all of it, we can do that with a chant that everyone is saying at the same time. We're using our powers in a good way. You know what I mean? It's just an idea. But I was thinking, if we do mass meditation, I think that there is power in that, and we could come up with something. But if we did it live and we had it scheduled, it would be something that we could roll across the screen that we could all say together at the same time.
Yeah,
Just something to think
absolutely.
about.
Perhaps we could have one person that says it so it's not confusing while we're online, but
Right, we're all saying it. I wouldn't even. I would just run the words across, and it would be at
oh,
a
that's a great
certain
idea.
time that everybody is saying it at the same time with the same intention.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So we could talk about that. Let us know in the chat, because we're live and we're all talking right now. Let us know what you're thinking, and especially in the sisterhood, we could come up with a nice chant that would call forth truth. You know what I mean?
Sounds good to me. Sorry, I was getting water for the doggies.
Oh, so I'm thinking, unless you have anything else to say right now, we're going to end this, because we're going to be expanding upon this into, we've got like at least 3 more episodes on this, what we're going for here. So is there anything else you want to touch on before we take off, sis?
Not really, because we're going to be hitting on those in the next episodes. I think that this was a really good place to start, sis, because it really shows, I think, honestly, a decline in our society
Mm-hmm.
with the supposed connectedness.
Yes.
And I don't think that our connectedness is going anywhere. It's about how we perform within this connectedness that's going to make the difference.
Absolutely.
Right? It's about awareness of this connectedness.
Yeah, because even think about our body, our brain has a left and right hemisphere. We've got a left and a right. We have a left and a right, but it is in one body.
Yeah.
And so until we actually utilize both the parts of that, we're not really whole, are we? Same with the light and the dark. Everything has polarity. It's understanding that polarity is still one pole.
Yeah. And that's interesting also, and something else to look into that you just like made me think of.
Okay.
Now, when uh Jim and I would play video games with our son, our oldest child, Tyler.
Uh-huh.
Tyler is friggin' incredibly intelligent.
Oh yeah.
And he's also left-handed. But
Mm.
well, he's actually ambidextrous. He can write with
Right.
both. I am
Yes.
technically also.
Mm-hmm.
And our mother was born left-handed and
Yeah.
forced to use her right hand.
Yes.
That tells me, and science, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that if you're left-handed, then you are right brain dominant. If
Yes.
you are or if you're right-handed, then you're left brain dominant. It's like the opposite. But if you're
Yes.
ambidextrous, it's easier for you to tap into both sides or both hemispheres of your brain.
It's theory,
And
but I do
listen,
believe that that's
schizophrenia
correct.
also runs in our family,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. Yes. And the antennas, or the receptors in the brain, there's a difference between what neuroscience calls divergent or typical, right? Is
Yes.
what the receptors look like. And
Yeah.
one is a lot furrier than the other. Again, when we start talking about frequency and disrupting, I think that an
Yeah.
overload of information and not being able to
Put a structure
utilize
to
it.
it. It's
Yeah.
like chaos meets structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow.
But that means that you can see more. You're actually perceiving more,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right? So
Yes.
actually getting a diagnosis
Mhm.
For being divergent can actually help somebody
I think so.
understand how their own mind or nervous system works and ways that they
Yes.
can function better within that,
Again, it's a
right?
superpower unless you let it define you.
Exactly. Because why else do you get diagnosed? Other than, in my opinion, this is just my own opinion. Granted, I'm 55, almost 55. I'll be 55 this month.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that I have a level of dyslexia.
Mhm.
I'm sure that I am probably neurodivergent. I did take that test of
Mhm.
that highly sensitive, and I'm like, yep, all the way up top, highly
Yep.
sensitive.
Yeah.
But as somebody that was, I think, a Gen Xer, I had to learn because how to cope with that. I mean, you hear, I don't even
Absolutely.
finish my damn sentences, okay?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
my mind is working much faster than my mouth can get it
Yeah.
out.
Hallelujah.
But I've never used any kind of medication. I've learned to know myself
Mhm.
in order
Mhm.
to work through some of my things to help me be more of a productive person, because
Mhm.
there was not an option for me to go see a psychiatrist or a
Right.
psychologist. There was no option for me to get
Yeah.
on any kind of medication. I just had to learn myself in order to
Yes. Yes. And
meet
we're
the
definitely going to
world.
be talking about neurodivergence in one of the episodes because see, I'm right there with you. I think that awareness is key. And if you are struggling and you can get help with the struggling, that's the point, right? Is to
Exactly.
help you turn that into a superpower because I think it can be a superpower. I think that that's the whole thing. If you don't understand, then it might feel like you're going crazy.
Yep. I mean, I feel that about everything, though. I mean, like even astrology.
Yeah.
The way that I see people using astrology kills me. Like you said, when you become too self identified in something,
Yes.
rather than using it as a guide or something to help
Yes.
you,
Yep. Yep.
that's when you're, in my opinion, you're using it
Hmm.
the wrong way.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
allowing it to paint a small little picture of something so expansive that a
Hmm.
little label cannot contain it,
Absolutely.
but
Because
you allow it to contain it.
exactly. Yeah. Labels. It's what we put on those labels, and we get too caught up in words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, let's close this one out, Sissy,
Well,
because
I
we
just
could
want to
go on
say
forever.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And stay tuned because there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And drop your comments. Let me know what you thought and what you want to talk about. And we'll keep this conversation going. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you in
Love
the
you
next
guys.
one. Love you. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.